Chapter 51. She's not a good person. You are listening at NovelFull.audio. Chapter 51. She's not a good person. His voice was dull and flat, neither unhappy nor angry. Cui Lucienne couldn't keep a smile on her face, and a slight frustration could be easily detected through her eyes. A touch of coldness gradually grew in her eyes. She immediately bit her lip until they turned white and said in a low voice, "I told Mom you were married." A cold glint flashed through Xian Zihao's eyes, but he was not angry. Sensing his displeasure, Cui Lucienne quickly walked around the table to his side and hugged his neck like a spoiled child. "Zihao, when you told me to go to the Maldives, I already knew that you wanted to leave me, but I still obeyed. I believe you will not disappoint me. But I did not expect." She paused, her eyes turning red, and her voice also became choked with sobs. "You actually went to register your marriage with Jiang Rulan. Didn't Bingqing say that the woman is not a good person? She must have wanted to use your influence to become young Madame Xian. Since when have you been listening to Bingqing's words?" Xian Zihao's voice was neither warm nor fiery, but he interrupted her at the right time. He pulled her hand away from his neck. Cui Lucienne's eyes trembled as she looked at her already drawn hand. She could tell that Xian Zihao did not seem to like hearing about Jiang Bingqing. She bit her lip and stepped back, no longer bothering him. Cui Lucienne always had a sense of decency. Although sometimes she will act like a spoiled child with Xian Zihao, she also knew when to obey and quietly stand by his side. She was raised in Xian family, and since her grandfather died in the battle to save General Xian, the Cui family had always been under the care of Xian family. Her father had died earlier, and she was adopted by General Xian as soon as she was born. Ever since she could remember, she had often heard General Xian saying that she would be his granddaughter in law when she was an adult. Although Xian Zihao, who was 5 years older than her, did not agree verbally, he did not wholly refuse. Every time Xian Zihao heard the General Xian mention their marriage, he would just laugh at it. They both grew up together. Furthermore, Xian Zihao had always been aggressive towards his sister, Xian Guiying, but he was very kind to her, Cui Lucienne. Whenever Guiying bullied her, he would always hide her behind his back and chase that naughty sister of him away. Xian Zihao was always kind, pampered and loved by her, never letting her suffer. Cui Lucienne was certain that Xian Zihao liked her. She had heard that Xian Zihao had an unforgettable relationship when he was studying in Boston. She also didn't know why his heart died in the end. She was more confident that Xian Zihao was destined to be her husband in this lifetime, and as long as she married him, she would be the true Xian family. Chapter 52. Can you accompany me to dinner? You are listening at NovelFull.audio. Over the past few years, General Xian had been demanding their marriage. The whole Xian family can see her dependence on Xian Zihao and her love for him. Xian Zihao was indulging her more and more. Occasionally, when she was acting coquettishly, he would kiss her symbolically. It seemed that he didn't have much resistance against this marriage that everyone in his family believed in. Even though Cui Lucienne could not feel his love for her, she always believed that if she married him, one day she can make him fall in love with her. She will walk on the red carpet sprinkled with the petals of millions of roses, while holding Xian Zihao's gentle and persistent hand, asking for blessings from everyone in the world as they held the wedding ceremony of the century. However, she could never imagine that she would hear a piece of news that would shatter her dreams. The woman named Jiang Rulan and she somehow entered into their relationship mysteriously. Cui Lucienne knew that Xian Zihao did not like that woman. She was so happy when he had arranged her vacation with Bingqing to the Maldives, but she would never thought that this event would happen once she returned. To this day, everything can only be categorized as regret. She shouldn't have left. She should not have let the damned woman take the opportunity to snatch Xian Zihao from her. Seeing Cui Lucienne standing next to him with red eyes, yet seemingly confused and afraid to speak, his heart finally softened. How are you during these 2 months? Were you happy? Not bad. She widened her glassy eyes. As she spoke, her eyes filled with uncontrollable sadness as she stared straight at him. Xian Zihao smiled and returned his attention to the file next to him. As long as you're happy, then it's good. I'll still have a meeting. If you don't drive here, ask Secretary Du to send a car to take you back. I don't want to go back. Xian Zihao slowly glanced at her. The smile in his eyes had turned cold. Cui Lucien took a deep breath and pleaded in a low voice, I heard that Beidou Avenue has opened a new Italian restaurant. Can you accompany me to dinner? Xian Zihao didn't say anything. Just one more time, Zihao. Bingqing returned to the city and will only be with me next week. I don't want to eat by myself. She bent down and pouted miserably. Zihao. Her hand climbed up the crook of his arm and she shook it coquettishly, come with me. I beg of you. I just got back from Beijing. I have a lot of work to do. No matter how busy you are, you can still spend an hour. Other people may not know about it, but how can I not know about you? No matter how busy you are, you can organize your time neatly. You just need to accompany me. The pleading look in her eyes was even more intense. She was like a child who didn't get candy and was asking for a hug from an adult. Please, Zihao. Zihao. Xian Zihao was helpless. All right. A sweet and radiant smile suddenly blossomed on Cui Liuxian's beautiful face. Zihao, I know you will always care about me. Xian Zihao did not respond to her words. Instead, he just pursed his lips and said nothing. Then you go ahead, I will come looking for you later. With that, Cui Lucien straightened her body, turned around happily and walked out. The heavy sandalwood door opened and closed, and the smile in Xian Zihao's eyes faded. Chapter 53. Dilemma I. You are listening at novelfull.audio. What's wrong? Why is your face pale? Did you sleep well last night? That when Jiang Rulan rushed back to the company in the evening, she found Xiong Rugang, who had requested leave in the morning, sitting with a frustrated facial expression next to her computer. She looked low-spirited. Jiang Rulan walked towards her while looking at her anxiously. She, Xiong Rugang, sighed and raised her head to look at her, Jiang Rulan. Sister Jiang, I have to move house and will be off for a week. Move? Didn't you live in the dorm? Yes, I should have lived in a dormitory, but because my parents' house will be demolished soon, I had to live with them in a new house on the outskirts of the city. If I stayed with them, I would have to spend at least an hour and a half on the bus to get to work every day. The real estate company suddenly ordered our family to leave the house. Now my parents have to rent a house and pay half a year rent directly for it. My family is not rich, how can they get that much money? The small amount of money they gave us was not enough to pay the rent a month. But the company said they gave according to requirements, but the problem was we didn't receive any profit. So, this is about money. Jiang Rulan smiled. Even though I don't have a lot of money here, I might be able to lend you a half-year rent. I will go to the bank to withdraw some money tonight. No need, I barely managed to raise a lot of money and had to borrow some from the neighbors. The main problem now is that my parents didn't want to move out of the house. Xiong Rugang sighed. The house belongs to our family and it's on the oldest street on the outskirts of H City near the city center. Most of the houses were abandoned during the late Qing dynasty, although they were very old but full of memories of our priceless generation, especially my parents and neighbors. Recently they did not have a good feeling. I know they loved the house, due to the demolition order, no one can do anything about it. Late Qing dynasty. You mean the alley at Bedford Street? Jiang Rulan's eyelids twitched. Yes, that's it. I once went through the place and saw that the house was indeed quite old, but did not affect the living conditions of the people. Furthermore, I saw that the architectural style was also unique and had a long history behind it. Xiong Rugang raised her hand to scratch her small head, then pushed the glasses on her face. She said in a depressed tone, "That's right, the house there is just as important as my parents' life. I heard that it was the Xiong family's ancestral house, which is why my parents took good care of it. I really don't understand why the developer wanted to demolish the house there." Jiang Rulan raised her eyebrows. In the eyes of those developers, the only thing that matters is a piece of land, but I think that the lane on Bedford Street can be a unique tourist destination for our city. Although our city isn't a tourist city, it is still one of the most prosperous places in the country. If the unique and real Qin Dynasty Street turned into a tourist attraction, it would be good for the city. Not only can it help the tourism industry, but it will also improve all aspects of the city. Chapter 54. Dilemma 2. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Yeah, why didn't I think of that? Xiong Rugang blinked. Actually, it doesn't matter if we can't live in that house anymore. My parents just don't want it demolished. Her face suddenly turned bitter. But, what's the point for saying that? The developers had decided it. The higher-ups have already issued a notice that demolition work will begin next week. Jiang Rulan frowned and sighed. She patted Xiong Rugang on the shoulder as if to calm her down. She was about to return to her desk when Xiong Rugang, called her again. Right, Sister Jiang. Xiong Rugang stood up and hurried towards Jiang Rulan with both hands supporting her on the desk and a pair of big eyes shining under the glasses. Aren't you Xian Ziheo's wife? What if you help me? As you said, it's good to turn that street into a beautiful place. Please don't let it get ruined. You just need to mention this to President Xian. Can you do that? I heard from the developer that one of their investors is Xian Group. Jiang Rulan's mouth twitched. Blowing against the pillow. This girl really knew how to imagine. She couldn't help but laugh. How can it be as easy as you say? But Xian Group is the big boss for the land industry in H City. Although the problem is not entirely under the jurisdiction of investors, if he intervenes, no one dares to violate his orders. Besides, Sister Jiang, you also say that if the street becomes a tourist attraction, it will be a good thing for H City. Tourism development will also be profitable. I was just thinking of asking for your help because of your words. Otherwise, I would be too embarrassed to bother you. What bother? The two of us are on such good terms. If you keep using such a tone, I will kick your ass. Jiang Rulan glared at her. Xiong Rugang immediately leaned back against her desk with a mischievous smile. Sister Jiang, please. Please help me. Jiang Rulan paused. She did want to help, but her husband had disappeared for 2 full months. Although she wanted to help her, the problem now was how can she find Xian Ziheo. Seeing Xiong Rugang's anxiousness, Jiang Rulan couldn't bear to refuse. She nodded her head helplessly. Sister Jiang. You're the best. Xiong Rugang suddenly grabbed her face and kissed her. Jiang Rulan immediately pushed her away and looked at her with disgust. Xiong Rugang. You little pervert. Xiong Rugang playfully stuck out her tongue. She then took 2 vouchers from her bag and placed them on the table. Sister Jiang, I have 2 vouchers here. As a token of gratitude, I will treat you a meal at the newly opened Italian restaurant on Beidou Avenue. Jiang Rulan looked at the coupon that was costing no less than 1,000 yuan. You bastard, you're not even sincere treating me to dinner. Xiong Rugang blinked her eyes. Xiong family lacks money. Shouldn't you give me a face? Do you want to accompany me or not? Since it's free, there's no reason for me to turn it down. Jiang Rulan grinned as she pushed her, Xiong Rugang, with her hand. Go. Get back to work. Stop bothering me. Xiong Rugang laughed as she returned the voucher to her pocket. She sat back at her desk. Jiang Ruolin was anxious. She did not know how to tell this issue to Xian Zihao. Glossary. 1. To make a bad situation less serious. Chapter 55. Enemies will surely meet. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Wow, there's too many people. At 6:30 p.m., Jiang Ruolin and Xiong Rugang appeared at the Beidou Avenue restaurant. Several rows of luxury cars were parked in front of the newly opened Italian restaurant. From the outside, it can be seen that the restaurant was full of people. I don't think there are any more empty seats, but if there are none, then we can be back in a few days. As she spoke, Jiang Ruolin turned to look around the restaurant. Oh, there must be empty seats. I heard that this is the most famous restaurant in Italy. They had chosen H City to open their first restaurant branch in China. I heard the foods were delicious. Last month, I asked a friend to help me get a coupon. Today is the first day of business, so it is normal if there are many people. Coincidentally, we are here on the first day they operate, so we may also experience a busy atmosphere rarely seen in Western restaurants. Xiong Rugang giggled and held Jiang Ruolang's hand. Let's go in. Fortunately, there was an empty table on the second floor. The waiter took them to the second floor. Xiong Rugang's face was filled with joy as she muttered to herself, "How lucky, there's a place like this in H City." As she was about to sit down, Jiang Ruolin suddenly felt two extraordinary gazes on her. She looked around and her eyes met with Han Shuigang's. He and Ling Feier sat at a table not far from her. Her body stiffened when she met those two eyes that seemed to be both cold and mocking at the same time. What kind of world is this? Indeed, the enemy will surely meet. Xiong Rugang did not realize what was happening. She sat down and opened the menu. Jiang Ruolin pulled her hand. "Rugang, let's eat another day." Sigh. "Sister Jiang, what happened? Why are you in such a hurry to leave?" Ling Feier's voice was heard from behind. Her tone was a little mocking. Jiang Ruolin halted her steps. Xiong Rugang was already walking fast to her side. "Sister Jiang, do you know each other?" Although Xiong Rugang did not know what had happened, but she could feel that Ling Feier was looking for a fight. Upon hearing her words, she understood that Jiang Ruolin was in a hurry to leave because of this couple. "I don't know them." Jiang Ruolin did not look back. As she thought of their engagement invitation card still in her bag, an unnamed fire burned in her heart. "You just got here, why are you in such hurry to leave? Is it because the food here is too expensive and you can't afford it?" Xiong Rugang felt something was wrong with those words. She immediately turned and looked at the well-dressed woman who was about 20 years old. Then she glanced at the tall and thin figure man. Her eyes were widening at the same time. That man was Han Shuigang. He was looking at Jiang Ruolin with a sneer on his face. Chapter 56. Enemies will surely meet. 2. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Xiong Rugang recalled that when Jiang Ruolin first entered the company, she interviewed the vice president of Ling Company. At the time, she did not think that Jiang Ruolin had any relationship with this vice president Han, but now there seemed to be a subtle relationship between them. Xiong Rugang pushed her glass up while looking at Ling Feier. "We can still afford Western food, so there is no need for you to pay for us. If you have a lot of money, why don't you donate to a charity fair? What are you trying to show off here? You are trying to show your wealth to those who don't know where the hell you come from." Anger appeared on Ling Feier's beautiful face. She put down a cup of coffee loudly, and because she had used too much force, the hot coffee gradually spilled into her hand. "Ah!" She cried out in pain. Xiong Rugang, on the other hand, was very happy. Don't be too arrogant. See what had happened. This was a punishment for an arrogant person like you. Rugang. Jiang Ruolin quickly took Xiong Rugang's hand, using her eyes to signal her. "Xiong Rugang, not to say anything more. Although Ling Feier was still young, her mind thinking was not simple. Coupled with her family background, she was not someone Xiong Rugang can offend. Han Shuigang quickly pulled Ling Feier's hand as she cried out in pain. He rubbed the back of her hand gently with a napkin. Even though Ling Feier didn't say anything, she had already won this battle from the level of love and tenderness showed off by him. Although Han Shuigang treats Ling Feier as a stepping stone for his own benefit, he still had feelings for her, right? Once again, Jiang Rulan felt an inevitable pain in her heart. She secretly warned herself to stay calm before firmly holding Xiong Rugang's hand and walking out quickly. She had to stay calm, even though she really wanted to pour hot coffee all over Ling Feier's and Han Shuigang's faces. Sister Jiang, who exactly is that woman? I've never seen you behave like this. Every time we go for an interview and meet an arrogant person, you will always be able to secretly scold them. Every time I hear you scolding people so ruthlessly, I feel that you are simply too handsome. This woman was clearly mocking you just now. Why did you leave? Xiong Rugang followed Jiang Rulan with an unhappy face. Jiang Rulan did not explain, just quietly pulled her towards the stairs. Jiang Rulan, don't forget to attend our engagement party on the 15th. Ling Feier seems to be buried in an ocean of happiness. Then, Jiang Rulan, heard Han Shuigang laugh lightly. Feier, don't be naughty, quickly eat. That kind of love, that kind of pleasure, that kind of coordination. Everything that Jiang Rulan was once familiar with was now transferred to Ling Feier. Her footsteps grew faster as he went down the stairs without looking back. Chapter 57. Why should she leave? You are listening at novelfull.audio. Sister Jiang, slow down. Xiong Rugang couldn't keep up with her speed and rushed to follow her downstairs. Don't walk that fast. Not that they will follow us. Jiang Rulan stopped in her tracks. Why did she leave? Why should she leave? Why should she avoid them? However, when she was about to turn around and walk back, Jiang Rulan suddenly stopped. No, she did not have much self-control over herself. If she sat near them and watched these two lovebirds, no matter how open-minded she would still be so angry until she would vomit blood. To prevent the wound in her heart from getting worse, she better leave. As she thought about it, Jiang Rulan continued walking towards the door. Xiong Rugang was stunned by her actions, so she quickly chased after her again. Sister Jiang, the vice president had a very close relationship with you, right? I can tell from his eyes that he and you. Rugang, I know you want to protect me, but you have to be careful when arguing with people like them. Jiang Rulan interrupted her and changed the topic. Xiong Rugang was taken aback. That woman from before had a good background. No matter what her identity is, you should always pay attention to one thing in the future. Never offended people like her. You are still young and you still have a long way to go. No matter how smart you are, this world has cruelly carried out the saying, encouragement is the devil, realistically. Xiong Rugang's face darkened. Sister Jiang, you are only 2 years older than me, okay. Having experienced it by myself, I couldn't help but reminded you. Jiang Rulan innocently blinked her eyes as if her previous unhappiness had been forgotten. She held Xiong Rugang's hand and said, let's go. I will treat you to eat elsewhere. You can treat me to this Western cuisine another day. They both laughed as they walked out of the restaurant's revolving door. Not far ahead, Cui Lucian was walking towards them, holding on to Xian Ziheo's arm. Jiang Rulan raised her head and looked at them. She was shocked for a moment before grabbing Xiong Rugang's arm and quickly pulled her to the left of the marble staircase. Xiong Rugang didn't expect her suddenly pulled her arm. Ah, she cried in pain. What's wrong? My legs seem to be sprained. Xiong Rugang lowered her head in pain. Jiang Rulan squatted with anxiety. I wasn't paying attention just now. My heels got stuck on the stairs. How is it? Does it hurt? Do you need to go to the hospital? Jian Rulan didn't care about her surrounding as she squatted to caress her, Xiong Rugang, ankle. In a tone of apology, she said, "Sorry, I did not pay attention when I pulled you. It's nothing. My ankle is just slightly dislocated." Xiong Rugang smiled and wanted to stand up. However, as soon as she stood up, she screamed in pain and fell back down the stairs. Her face was also pale. Chapter 58. Xian Zihao. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Jian Rulan once again put his hand on Xiong Rugang's ankle. Her expression changed. "We must go to the hospital immediately." "It's fine, I'm not a delicate woman." While the two of them were talking, Cui Lucian and Xian Zihao walked past them. He was unaware of the situation on the stairs. From the corner of his eye, he casually glanced at the two women and walked past them. However, when Xian Zihao heard this rather familiar voice, he turned and looked at them indifferently. Xian Zihao. Xiong Rugang turned her body to see them. When she saw the figure with extraordinary temperament, she could not help but lifted her head to see the person's face. Jian Rulan was stunned. She raised her head to look at him. When Xian Zihao heard Xiong Rugang, his eyebrows rose slightly as his gaze locked on Jian Rulan. Jian Rulan was aghast and at the same time, she felt the gaze from the elegant woman standing next to Xian Zihao on her. She had seen her in the elevator once and knew that it was Cui Lucian. Since Xian Zihao had a beauty by his side, she didn't want to bother him. She did not care about Xiong Rugang's stunned feeling. She tried to support her body. "Let's go, I'll take you to the hospital." Zihao. At first, Cui Lucian did not pay much attention to the two women who were squatting on the stairs. After hearing Xiong Rugang's words, she looked at them with displeasure. From her perspective, since the two of them were opposites, she couldn't see them clearly. However, Xian Zihao suddenly turned and walked towards them. Surprised by that, Cui Lucian immediately grabbed his arm and followed. Just when she was about to ask him what he was doing, she finally saw the face of one of the women. This is. She had seen Jian Rulan on the news. Cui Lucian's beautiful face changed several times in the blink of an eye. Feelings of unhappiness were immediately hidden. She held Xian Zihao's arm tighter and glanced at Jian Rulan blandly. "Your friend?" Xian Zihao asked in a light tone. "Are you alright?" The moment he opened his mouth, Xiong Rugang was struck dumb. She looked at the face that looked more and more like Xian Zihao's, then turned her head to look at Jian Rulan. There is no way he really is Xian Zihao. The corner of Jian Rulan's mouth twitched. She pinched her, Xiong Rugang, arm lightly. Xiong Rugang felt the pain and stopped asking questions immediately. She turned her head to look at her idol, who was less than a meter away from her. She opened her mouth, wanting to laugh, but she was so excited that she didn't know how to laugh anymore. "Hello, President Xian." Xian Zihao looked at her with a smile. "Hello." Chapter 59. Let me help you. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Jian Rulan gripped Xiong Rugang's hand tightly to prevent her from fainting. Luckily, at that moment, she noticed a beautiful woman beside Xian Zihao. Her small face froze. She blinked her eyes and looked at the expressionless Jian Rulan. Seeing the doubt in Xiong Rugang's eyes, Jian Rulan had no way to explain and could only turn to Xian Zihao. "She was my colleague. Her ankle sprained and it looked serious. I wanted to send her to the hospital." Cui Lucian's eyes never left her as she spoke. Although Cui Lucian held Xian Zihao's arm intimately, she only showed a kind smile as if she did not know who Jian Rulan was. Or perhaps, even if she did, it didn't prevent her from standing by this man's side. Jian Rulan was just an intruder, and with a marriage certificate. She didn't seem to pose much of a threat to her. Jiang Rulan was well aware of this fact, and because of that, she wanted nothing more than to leave this place with Xiong Rugang. It's hard to get a taxi on this road at this time. Xian Zihao said warmly, wanting to help Xiong Rugang down the stairs. I'll walk you guys down. No need. Jiang Rulan immediately rejected it without the slightest euphemism. Zihao. Cui Lucien hugged his arm and frowned. I booked a table with the manager at 7 o'clock. They deliberately left a nice table for us. If we left now, we would not be able to eat today. Glancing at Cui Lucien, whose eyes were full of anger, he sighed helplessly and said, You must eat today. HM. You promised to accompany me today. Cui Lucien shook his arm, coquettishly, You always followed my word and never make me unhappy just because of outsiders. Don't go. I will be disappointed if I can't taste the food here. Xian Zihao seemed to be deep in thought. After a while, he turned to Jiang Rulan and said, Secretary Du is nearby. I will tell him to take you to the hospital. In fact, Jiang Rulan was also worried that she will not get a taxi at this time. No matter how much she wanted to refuse, it was more important to treat Xiong Rugang's injury as soon as possible. As she thought of Xian Zihao's gentle secretary, she finally nodded. Okay, I'll be troubling you. Hearing her polite answer, Xian Zihao just raised his eyes slightly as he looked at her. In the end, he said nothing and took out his phone and allowed Cui Lucien to lead him into the restaurant. H City People's Hospital. Jiang Rulan had just completed the procedure on the first floor and returned to the orthopedic clinic on the fourth floor. The doctor who had consulted her was no longer there. Xiong Rugang was the only one sitting on the bed. She had a thoughtful look on her face as she supported her chin with one hand. When Jiang Rulan entered the room, her eyes shone as she said, Sister Jiang, Secretary Du looks like my ex-boyfriend. Chapter 60. Why did you call me? You are listening at novelfull.audio. Jiang Rulan stared at her without saying a word. Your feet were the one that's swollen, not your head. How can you think that far? What are you talking about? Xiong Rugang puffed up her face and twisted her body on the bed. She changed her posture and said, If you want to talk about infatuation, I'm infatuated with Xian Zihao. Jiang Rulan facepalmed. Here it comes again. This girl really can't stop talking about him. It was enough to torture her. Oh right, Sis Jiang, who was the woman who was with your husband just now? Seriously, that woman is really shameless. Even though she knew President Xian had a wife, she still clung to him like this. I noticed when the woman looked at you, she hugged him tighter and didn't want to let go. She was obviously provoking your status as CEO Xian's wife. How can you endure it? If it were me, I would have slapped her face for trying to seduce my husband. Jiang Rulan just smiled. Then why didn't you slap her earlier? Xiong Rugang was embarrassed. I was so infatuated with President Xian that I nearly fainted. Jiang Rulan knew that Xiong Rugang's personality would not change, so she continued to laugh at her. When the doctor returned and wanted to continue examining her, Xiong Rugang, ankle bone, she quietly left the diagnosis room. Public hospital corridors were always crowded with people. Jiang Rulan stood by the stairs and breathed a sigh of relief. She took out her cell phone and looked at the time. It's 8 p.m. She sighed and casually leaned against the handrail. At that moment, her phone suddenly rang. When she saw the caller's name, she was shocked. Hello. Was your friend all right? How about her injury? Xian Zihao's voice was heard from the phone. The doctor said there was nothing wrong. The ligament was slightly torn and will heal after she had rested for 2 days. She was undergoing further inspections. Secretary Du had left. Yes, after he sent us to the hospital, I let him leave. After all, he has a lot of work to do, so it's not good for me to keep bothering him. You are very considerate to my subordinates. Xian Ziheo's voice was tinged with amusement. You used to live like a prince. You were born to be a young master, so you probably won't understand how small employees like us feels. I think the way Secretary Du dressed tonight, he had a date with his girlfriend. That's why when you called him, I feel a little embarrassed. When Jiang Rulan and Xian Ziheo thought of Du Yiting's face that would turn green from holding back his grunts, a smile appeared on their face. A soft and gentle laugh came from the other side, and then they both fell silent. Binoel. It wasn't until she heard Xiong Rugang called her name at the door of the diagnosis room that Jiang Rulan hurried. My friend had just finished the examination. By the way, why did you call me? Xian Ziheo was silent. From the end of the line, she could hear his soft breath. It's nothing. Go home and rest after your friend's business is over. Be careful on the way home. He gave some brief instructions before ending the call. Jiang Rulan also put her phone down and looked at it suspiciously. Was the sun rising in the west? Was Xian Ziheo concerned about her? But why did she felt like he was just given orders to his subordinates? Jiang Rulan laughed at herself as she put the phone back into her bag and quickly went to find Xiong Rugang.